Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Grain Market Blast with myself and the goddess of grain herself, Mrs. Angie Setzer. As usual, Angie will be providing us with a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows, market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, and just whilst we wait for Angie to join us, as usual, nothing discussed in this Spaces session constitute trading or investment advice, or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Pasey, or indeed Mrs. Angie Setzer. Let me just make sure she is there. She is. She's now on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Just very good, thank you. Well, recovering from my illness. I apologize for
I
not being around
know.
a day.
Was it
2 days.
the man flu? Are you okay?
Yeah, it very much so, and I'm still very much in that foggy. When you're in that like mentally foggy state. So it's probably wise to just remind everyone that we do record these live. So
Right.
sometimes it's a bit like, what the hell's going on? It's just
Right.
because of that, really.
Right. Yeah. That's it. Just getting back onto the saddle. On the saddle is the way I think you're supposed to not.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yep, saddle me up.
Yeah. So did you do the legals? Or are we ready to rock?
I did. We're all good.
Oh, look at that. I missed that part. I was just like not even listening. So yeah, happy Wednesday. Welcome back. Feels like a Monday for some of us here today. For sure, probably. Is it Wednesday? It is, right? All day.
Yes,
And
all day.
happy October 1st. Look at that. So we got the USDA report yesterday. So far this morning, just kind of a continuation of the old stuff all over again, right? Like it's just basically what's most fun about this job is I get to say things like, oh, after the 30th, it'll get better. And then it doesn't, we just kind of keep doing the same thing all over again. And that's where we are right now. We did get the numbers yesterday. That's going to be the biggest focus. We had a bearish surprise, you could say, in the corn market, but I don't know if it was as surprising as what everyone wants to kind of paint it. I was a bit surprised. We talked about the average trade estimate ahead of the number, and it was really small. Like I think carryout last month was 1.327 billion. And traders were kind of like, oh, they're going to raise carry out 12 million bushel or whatever. When in reality, most everyone that was having a conversation, analyst wise, merchandiser wise, all of these things were kind of like, oh, well, we're probably going to see a couple 100 million bushels more. There was one that was very, very adamant that we were going to see upwards of 400 million bushels of additional corn in yesterday's number. And so, the fact that we really only settled like a penny and a half below where we were trading prior to the report, when all is said and done, says a lot. You got a 200 million bushel surprise in corn, and we're basically down today plus, basically down a nickel from where it was.
Right.
And in the end, there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to have to be paying attention to now, or that we're going to have to watch. But it just kind of takes, I think if we would have had the number come in line with where the USDA was last month, or maybe even a touch smaller yesterday, we may have seen, a desire to move this corn market towards 450 or whatever. Now we have no real need to move out of the range. And really today, as you can see, we're just kind of trying to establish where the low end of the range needs to be. And so basically we kind of failed at what is nearby support here. 410's kind of got to hold. That's the next level. If that holds, and I think we work our way back towards 425, then guess what? We're probably stuck in a 20-cent range for a while in corn. So if you hear a sound, it is just me gently weeping on the inside. So over onto the bean side of things, the report yesterday came in with bean carryout or bean ending stocks a little bit lower than what traders were anticipating. Is 7 million bushels, like really not much. What's in the bean whole, the whole scheme of things, it's a tiny amount. And it didn't mean much, but you really saw, and you're seeing a continuation of this with, piling on this whole idea that China's not buying, I've now seen it. I've lost count. Like it's in every major news publication, every major TV show, anything and everything that's out there, they're just really going to kind of beat this drum over and over and over again. And that's what we're seeing. You're just seeing, even with what is, relatively tight carry out with the current projection, and the idea that we could probably lose a bushel or two potentially on production, which some are arguing, that we won't because of early bean yields or whatever. It is surprising to see the export book as small as what it is, and have a lot of folks still kind of say that we're going to need to continue to trim that, overall, when we have the rest of the world that will need some beans and things. But, negative sentiment, overall sentiment is just exceptionally poor. And I had this conversation with a member of the soybean association last week, and in my opinion, they're not helping. Instead of focusing on all of the good things that are going on from a demand standpoint, the fact that the Western Corn Belt's seen 250 million bushel of additional crush demand in the last 2 years, and this, that, and the other thing, like we're just kind of all crying about how a lack of China business means beans have to go to zero. And that really isn't the case. I mean, but you've just got this sort of negative sentiment, this idea that China's never coming in. There are folks now, even the sentiment is so poor in grains that, oh, well, the government shutdown's bearish. How? Why? What are we talking about? Now we're just making stuff up. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we're not going to get information from the USDA or whatever, but this isn't the first time and it's not going to be the last time. And we still have the cash market that's going to point us in the right direction. And so from a corn and soybean standpoint, we got our ending stocks update yesterday. Kind of too long, didn't read, put a bow on this sort of thing. The corn number was 200 million or 195 million bushels higher than last month. So you will see that carry forward into the new crop as beginning stocks. You're also going to see some adjustments to feed and residual because the USDA did. A lot of folks had said that the carryout would be bigger because of bigger production last year. It wasn't bigger production last year. It just so happens that we aren't importing feeders out of Mexico and a handful of other things, feeder cattle, and so we have less mouths to feed. We knew that the hogs and pigs report showed us that we had less, hogs on hand. We had less cattle on hand. You look at cattle on feed, and so to see a bit of a slowdown in feed use in Q4 isn't surprising. And it probably spills over, at least into Q1, if not Q2 of the new marketing year. And so, yeah, the argument that we could be cutting feed and residual in the upcoming USDA numbers is valid, but it also is important to recognize that for every bushel we're not feeding, to cattle here in this side of the border, Mexico's going to have to increase on their side because they're
Right.
not exporting, So it's the beauty part about grains is there's always so much of supply and always so much of demand. It's just a matter of where it comes from or how it comes all together when all is said and done. So that one, corn number, it was kind of the last, hopefully, it was the next bearish input, at least from the USDA, and a wide string of super bearish inputs the USDA has given us. Soybeans wasn't bearish, but everyone hates them because all they hear about is that China, isn't buying. Now, bajillion-dollar question will be, do we hold support here? Do we get back above 10? Do we see us trade back up towards above 10.15 or at least 10.05 here today or something like that? If so, then that could be a pretty positive sort of move. I don't expect beans to take another significant leg lower. And if they do, I don't expect them to stay there very long. I think this whole China being the only thing we focus on is misplaced. And this conversation about Argentina is out of chronological order too, but
Yeah.
I won't go off on that tangent at this point. Wheat numbers were bad to bearish too. Production came in higher than what traders were expecting. Surprise, surprise. The USDA is in a long line of government entities forecasting very, very large wheat crops. And so that one came in. We saw wheat test contract lows yesterday and trade to new lows today. What's most interesting to me about wheat is there's a continual conversation on how world end users aren't aggressive purchasers of wheat, how, they're basically just going hand to mouth and things like that. And I really find that interesting when folks are saying that, because we are seeing our wheat exports, all wheat exports out of the US increase year over year. We're over double last year's book on the hard red winter wheat exports. Last year at this time, we were 2.5 million metric tons. This year, we have 5.4 million metric tons sold. Spring wheat, soft reds in line with a year ago. Spring wheat's down just a touch, but really we're seeing some pretty strong buying interest. We're up 2.6 million metric ton year over year. And so that's the part that's really of interest to me is that we keep hearing about this lack of demand, yet we're seeing really strong demand for the US. And even more so, we're learning, that much of this that's being purchased is in the spot market.
Yeah.
So, this idea that we don't have demand, I feel like is a misnomer. I feel like it's the demand is there. You're just not seeing these countries go out and put on these massive books. And they're doing it because they're being constantly told that everything's going to get cheaper down the road. So why would they be in a big hurry? Right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But the other thing that really is getting me right now on wheat, and I really want folks to kind of tread with caution. There's a lot of conversation about people bagging wheat, and especially in Europe. So if you guys have evidence of this, please share it with me
So
because
did you say bagging or begging?
putting it in a bag, a big
Right.
white silo bag.
Okay. Right.
So
So,
they're
so it's exactly how it sounds in my head then.
100%. Yes. So if we really are putting, because this is the argument right now, like the constant argument right now is, out of the Black Sea in Europe, production was much larger than the cash market is showing. The farmer just put it into bags, is what they're saying.
Right.
Wheat can't go into a bag. You can put wheat into a bag, but it's only going to last for about 3 months. Wheat and soybeans, once you get them dry, pick up moisture. They can pick up moisture. You can put moisture back into wheat and soybeans. You can get them down to 13%, but if you put them in a damp environment, they're going to be up to 16. They're going to spoil. You're going to get bugs. Like the thing with wheat is you have two types of wheat. Wheat that doesn't have, like that doesn't have bugs in it right now, and wheat that does. Like you know what I mean? Like it's just how it works, unfortunately. Sorry you guys, but
So at some
it
point,
is.
if it stands around, it's going to get bugs in it at some
It's
point.
going to be, yes, that is just anyone that's actually handled physical wheat will tell you it is a pain in the ass. And so this idea that we're taking wheat directly out of a field for growers that don't have the infrastructure and putting it into bags and sitting on millions of metric tons of this stuff, like, okay, it's going to be garbage in 6 months. So we really have to be careful. Like the thing about COVID is that leading into COVID, we had this just in time idea from world buyers. No one went out and extended coverage. No one needed to. Everyone was told it was going to get cheaper. From 14 to 19, we were in a deflationary cycle in commodities, and you got to the point to where we were well below the cost of production for the world's farmers. If you can buy it cheaper on the board, then you can grow it. That's when you hit a critical point of mass, in a lot of places. And what happened when COVID hit and all of these other things is suddenly the tide went out and we realized that all of this supply that we thought we had, we didn't have.
Right.
Because when the rubber met the road all of a sudden and you needed to really, like, the cash market was pushing, you were seeing inversions, you're seeing basis rise, and we still weren't seeing movement, that was when everyone realized they'd overestimated production and things like that. I feel like we're on the same path. Like you can't, Ukraine right now, they're saying that there's no harvest pressure, that the market is inverted. The current market and cash corn market in Ukraine is heavily inverted because of harvest delays. This is the fourth harvest in a row for Ukraine. There's been quote unquote delays. Like maybe we should just admit that the crop is probably not as large as projected because they're in a war zone. We could do that, but we're not gonna. So, so that'll be the thing. We're just watching now. We got the USDA report out of the way yesterday. We'll get a supply and demand update coming. And really in cash grain now, it's just a matter of harvest is here. Bean harvest, you're in the middle of gut slot harvest right now. Like this is the midst. This will be the biggest pressure that you're going to see on this bean market across much of the Eastern Corn Belt, at least over the next 6 to 7 days. Once that's done, they're put away. Hold on to your butt. It'll be really interesting to see. And that's going to be the great part. That's what makes me so excited about it being October 1st. Now we get to see the cash market actually, do the things that it needs to do to tell us what's out there and what isn't. So that'll be it. We got the report out of the way. We're watching cash now, and then we're also paying attention to the escalation between Russia and Ukraine. You did see Russia say today something about interrupting their ability to ship. Provocative actions against Russian shipping may necessitate military responses. And this is kind of on the cusp or on the heels of Ukraine saying that Russia is using old tankers to launch those drones into
Yes.
Europe.
Yeah. The ones we see now right
So
outside of just outside of Copenhagen Airport, etc.
yes. Yes. And so you've got that going on. Zelensky's called for them to shut down the Baltic Sea to Russian traffic. Like you've got a lot of things that are happening currently that are going to be a big points of interest and are also going to have huge influence on movement. And so, to me, I think it's super important to point out, if you look at the USDA's numbers here, between Russia and Ukraine, they're anticipating, exports of 60 million metric ton between the two. Ukraine's half basically of what they shipped a year ago, July through September. Russia is down substantially. Like at this point, you're going to have to trim that back, and someone else is going to pick that up. And right now, the U.S. is the cheapest. best quality, most reliable supplier. And so, yeah, yesterday's quarterly stocks number was pretty negative for wheat overall, but I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see us have to bump exports up further, as we move ahead. And there's just going to be a lot of things that are going to change in this market. We continuing to watch yield and cash markets and the escalation between Russia and Ukraine and all of that. But overall, it's same stuff, different day. I'm so excited. Oh yeah, I love a tight range bound market. It's so much fun.
It's only been, well, it's been 84 years. I'm still waiting for a bid in wheat.
Oh my gosh, that's just where I'm at. Like, and that's what everyone, like, I'll get a question. It'll be like, "Are you still optimistic?" Girl, I'm always optimistic, but now I'm just getting I'm jaded. I'm getting jaded.
As we said last week, we're not wrong. We're early, and boy, are we early.
At this rate, I'm gonna, I'll be 85 and I'll be right, and I will retweet myself at that point. But yeah, for now, here we sit, and really overall, yeah, we just got to assess where the lower end of the range is, kind of establish the new range, let harvest come at us, see how the cash market, works its way out and all of that sort of stuff. And yeah, time's the only thing that's going to heal this. And yeah, to that, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, on that positive note,
Right?
Angie, thank you so much as always. And again, my apologies for not being around Monday, Tuesday.
No,
I
you're
will
fine.
I will get this up on the old Spotify and Apple, etc., because it now is a podcast rather than the spaces. So hopefully, woohoo, means it's getting out there a lot easier to people. But yeah, whatever you're doing today, stay safe, keep it tight. And myself and Angie will see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Have a good one.